Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Nishit Kumar, and with me is Nipunika Shahid, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India abstains from voting on UNSC resolution on situation in Ukraine, calls to return to path of diplomacy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks with President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, conveys India's concern for safety and security of Indian citizens present in Ukraine. First flight from Romania with 219 Indian nationals from Ukraine lands in Mumbai. Indian Embassy in Ukraine advises Indian citizens to move to border posts with prior coordination with Government of India officials. Pakistan's Punjab police reveal that over 3,500 kidnapped girls and women remain missing across the province. In FIH Pro League hockey tournament, India defeats Spain in both men's and women's matches at Kalinga Stadium in Bhubaneswar. And second T20 cricket match between India and Sri Lanka underway in Dharamshala. With the new Omicron variant of coronavirus causing concern, we appeal to our listeners to be vigilant and to get fully vaccinated and help others, including children between 15 and 18 years, to get vaccinated. Please continue to follow these 3 simple steps to stay safe. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki doori for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. India abstained from voting on UNSC resolution on situation in Ukraine, which was tabled for action in the UN Security Council Friday night. A report.
In the 15-member council, the resolution received 11 votes in favor. Russia voted against it, and India, the UAE, and China abstained. Since Russia voted against the resolution, that is a veto against the resolution, it was not passed. India abstained and issued an explanation of vote EOV after the vote. In its EOV, India called for return to the path of diplomacy. It called for respecting sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. India's permanent representative to the United Nations, T.S. Tirumurti, at the UNSC meeting on Ukraine, said that it is a matter of regret that the path of diplomacy was given up. He said, "We must return to it."
We urge that all efforts are made for the immediate cessation of violence and hostilities. No solution can ever be arrived at the cost of human lives. We are also deeply concerned about the welfare and security of the Indian community, including a large number of Indian students in Ukraine. The contemporary global order has been built on the UN Charter, international law, and respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. All member states need to honor these principles in finding a constructive way forward. Dialogue is the only answer to settling differences and disputes, however daunting that may appear at this moment.
India maintained its consistent, steadfast and balanced position on the matter. India has been in touch with all sides, urging parties concerned to return to the negotiating table. Sources said, by abstaining, India retained the option of reaching out to relevant sides in an effort to bridge the gap and find the middle ground with an aim to foster dialogue and diplomacy. Anubha Rohatgi for World News, All India Radio.
The Russian embassy in Delhi said it appreciates India's independent and balanced position at the voting in the UNSC on the 25th of this month. In a tweet, the embassy said, in the spirit of the special and privileged strategic partnership, Russia is committed to maintain close dialogue with India on the situation around Ukraine. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Saturday spoke with President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. During the conversation, President Zelensky briefed Prime Minister Modi in detail about the ongoing conflict situation in Ukraine. Mr. Modi expressed his deep anguish about the loss of life and property due to the ongoing conflict. He reiterated his call for an immediate cessation of violence and a return to dialogue, and expressed India's willingness to contribute in any way towards peace efforts. The Prime Minister also conveyed India's deep concern for the safety and security of Indian citizens, including students, present in Ukraine, and sought facilitation by Ukrainian authorities to expeditiously and safely evacuate Indian citizens. First flight from Romania carrying 218 stranded Indian students from war-torn Ukraine landed at Mumbai Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Airport Saturday evening. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said progress is being made regarding evacuation of Indian nationals from Ukraine. He said the External Affairs Ministry teams are working on the ground round the clock and he is personally monitoring the evacuation efforts. The minister thanked Foreign Minister of Romania Bogdan Orescu for his government's cooperation. Welcoming the Indian students, Union Minister Piyush Goyal said that the government of India is working in mission mode to ensure the safety of the citizens.
पिछले 2-2.5 दिन से प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी और फॉरेन मिनिस्टर जयशंकर जी चिंता कर रहे हैं, दिन रात फोन कर रहे हैं, रशियन प्रेसिडेंट से बात कर रहे हैं, यूक्रेनियन प्रेसिडेंट से बात कर रहे हैं, बाकी सब देशों से बात की, आपको बुखारेस्ट से लेके आए, सब जगह पे अरेंजमेंट किया है। आप सुरक्षित हैं, घर आ गए, लेकिन आपके जितने साथी हैं हम उन सबको भी घर लाएंगे। ये पक्का मैसेज आपको उनको देना है, आपके पास उनके नंबर्स होंगे, आप संपर्क में हैं, उनका हौसला बढ़ाने, you have to give them strength. Please convey to them not to worry at all. We are committed to get every brother and sister from India back home safe and sound. तो आप लोग एकदम बेफिक्र हैं और उनको भी कॉन्फिडेंस देना कि आराम से बॉर्डर्स तक आ जाए। बॉर्डर से आपने तो स्वयं अनुभव किया, हमारे एम्बेसी के लोग उनको लेके आएंगे एयरपोर्ट पे। प्लेन्स हैव बीन अरेंज्ड, ऑल अरेंजमेंट्स आर डन। रास्ते में कोई तकलीफ तो नहीं होगी, बस तो अभी आपको जल्दी से इमिग्रेशन करा के फिर नाश्ता वगैरह करके फिर आपको अपने अपने घर हम पहुंचाएंगे। आप सबका अपने मातृभूमि में बहुत 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 स्वागत। 3 cheers for India.
The first batch of Indian students entered Hungary from Ukrainian side at Zahun crossing on Saturday. Indian Embassy in Hungary said in a tweet the students are travelling onward to Budapest for return to India by Air India flight. Later, more batches of Indian students entered Hungary from Zahun crossing. Meanwhile, Embassy of India in Hungary has said in an advisory for Indians to be evacuated from Ukraine via Hungary that the Zahun-Azerad border crossing only allows crossing by bus or van and walk-in is not allowed. It said students coming through this border crossing should possess valid passport, residence permit, student ID card, vaccination card or certificate. The Embassy of India in Bratislava is in contact with government of Slovakia for evacuation of Indian nationals from Ukraine through Azerad when Nemak border. Indian missions in Bucharest, Budapest and Warsaw are also involved in this exercise to help those who are close to their borders. The Embassy of India in Bratislava is in contact with the government of Slovakia for evacuation of Indian nationals from Ukraine. Indian missions in Bucharest, Budapest and Warsaw are also involved in this exercise to help those who are close to their borders. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on developments in Ukraine. In conversation are Anil Vadva, former diplomat, and Manas Pratim Bhuyan, journalist.
Ambassador Vadwa, the world is reeling under a massive and unexpected crisis following the Russian military offensive against Ukraine. India, as a leading global power, has stakes in the situation around Ukraine. And during a resolution at the UNSC, India today abstained from voting. But at the same time, India talked about the need for protecting sovereignty and territorial integrity of states and sought immediate cessation of violence and hostilities. So how do you see India's overall position on the Ukraine crisis? The Prime Minister has already spoken to President Vladimir Putin the day before yesterday and insisted that the violence should end. Overall, India's role is being watched by leading powers. So how do you see India handling the entire issue, India's stand, as well as the way India abstained from the UN resolution at the UN Security Council today?
So let me begin by saying that India's stand on the issue in Ukraine has been evolving. And it is a well-considered and well-thought-of stand, which is being reflected in the vote which happened in the UN Security Council today. In future, as the situation evolves, I'm sure India's position will also evolve. So that's the first point. Secondly, Normandy process was on. At that time, India had been advocating dialogue And because of the Normandy process, India supported the Normandy process and was hoping that diplomacy will prevail. And just before this process began, also, India had talked about the Minsk agreement was on the table, and Russia was willing to talk about the Minsk agreement. So today's vote, by making sure that we have pointed out that the global order is built on the UN Charter and international law, and the respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of states must be taken into account. That has taken into account the action of aggression as far as Russia is concerned. But India has a lot of stakes as far as the relationship with Russia is concerned. And because of that, the main thrust of Indian argument and the explanation of vote at the UN Security Council has been that there should be cessation of violence and hostilities, which is in keeping with what India has said in the past as well. But at the same time, has pointed out the principles which are there as far as the UN is concerned should be taken into account for a constructed way forward. And therefore, dialogue is the only way of settling disputes and differences, however daunting they may appear at this point in time. And then we've also said that we regret that the path of diplomacy was given up, and we must return to that same path again. So by doing so, I think India has taken into account its own legitimate security interests, which arise from its deep relationship with the Russian Federation. And at the same time, it has taken into account the fact that the aggressive action of Russia, these special operations that have been carried out in Ukraine, have to take into account the UN Charter and the principle of international law, sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine.
So, Ambassador Wadhwa, in the last three statements that India made at the UN Security Council since February 17th, and then again another statement on February 21st and another statement on February 23rd, India talked about protecting the security interests of all the concerned parties, including Russia. But that line was missing in today's comments. Actually, India issued an explanation of vote after the voting. That explanation of vote doesn't mention that line that security interests of all parties should be taken into consideration. Do you see a subtle change in India's approach? Also that, in fact, even as we abstain from voting, but the clear reference to the need for protecting sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, do you see a message from India to Russia? And do you see a sharper tone in our overall comment on the issue? And is the kind of criticism of Russian action, do you see a very, very subtle change in India's position vis-a-vis whatever Russia has been doing? So how do you read it? The absence of this line about the need to ensure security interests of all concerned, as well as the new phrase of the need for protecting sovereignty and territorial integrity of the states.
Yes, you are absolutely right. And as I pointed out earlier, the Indian position has evolved from what was said on the 17th to what was said on the 21st. After that, what has been said on the 23rd in our statement. In fact, in the explanation of vote, the fact that the legitimate security interests of all states is missing is a natural consequence of what has happened by way of action vis-a-vis Ukraine. And if we are emphasizing the fact that the sovereignty and territorial states to be protected because that's built on the UN Charter and international law, then obviously it does not go together with earlier position that India had taken. The situation has evolved now, and in this current situation, going forward, India will be talking about cessation of hostilities, which has come in as a new element as well. And the second new element that we are going to see in future is an emphasis on dialogue as the only way forward.
How do you see, in fact, India's overall role? I mean, India has been in touch with all the major global powers, the EU as well as the US, Russia. All the leading powers are actually involving India in the overall approach. What kind of role you see for India? For instance, the Ukrainian foreign minister also called up our external affairs minister S. Jaishankar last evening. So everybody is actually looking up to India, or when these negotiations are going on to find a solution. So what kind of role that you see for India in the current scenario, Ambassador Wadhwa?
So India is uniquely placed in the current situation. a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council at present, but also because of its relationship that it enjoys with the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And that is the reason why, as you pointed out, the Ukrainian foreign minister has been in touch with India. Essentially, this is also the reason why the EU countries and the United States have been in touch with India because of the awareness that there is a certain amount of influence that India can bring to bear in an informal manner as far as the Russian Federation is concerned. And that is why we saw the telephonic conversation happen between our Prime Minister and President Putin.
Ambassador Wadhwa, do you see any possibility of any criticism against India from the West, particularly in view of India abstaining from this voting on the resolution? Do you see any kind of possibility that people may criticize India for siding with countries like UAE and China, because China, UAE, and India were the three countries which abstained from voting? So how do you see India actually handling these kind of possible criticism that may come its way?
So definitely there would be some amount of criticism which will come in. There is no doubt that those who are part of the Quad, for instance, or the United States, or even the EU, which expected India to vote for the resolution, will be disappointed. But the main reason why India has abstained is, as we have discussed just now, because of India's legitimate security interests. I think India needs to act according to its own legitimate security interests, and that is the way that diplomacy has to be conducted. This has been a principled position for India as well as far as the Russian act in the past are concerned as well, because as I pointed out in the very beginning, of the strong and the close relationship that India and the Russian Federation enjoy. So previous actions of Russia in Eastern Europe, for instance, the actions that were taken earlier in Ukraine, 2014, for instance, received a similar response as far as India is concerned. And this vote is in keeping and it is consistent with the trend which has occurred in the past.
Ambassador Wadhwa, in fact, as an ambassador, in fact, who served in various key countries as India's ambassador. So how do you see the overall situation panning out in the next few days? What is your prediction? In fact, will it escalate further after possibly, in fact, fall of Kyiv to Russian forces? There are efforts now to, bring down the tensions and stabilize the situation. What do you think of it?
Not possible to predict the exact outcome, as is normal whenever there is a conflict which breaks out. If we are lucky and as we hope that this conflict will remain confined to a short period of time and that it will not spread. And also the third point, which is very important, is that the offer of negotiations between Russian Federation and Ukraine will be taken up and the two sides will meet in Belarus. Now, of course, there is a prerequisite to that, which means that Russia would like to see a government in Ukraine which will commit itself to not to allow NATO to expand into its territory, and also commit itself to, in a sense, a neutral position vis-a-vis Russian Federation and European Union and NATO. So this is an important point that the Russians will have at the back of their minds, even as they have offered to negotiate. So we are hoping that it will be a short, period of time before we can see a cessation of hostilities.
Mr. Wadhwa, Russia has been our one of the key strategic partners and supplier of arms. So in view of massive sanctions that the Western powers have imposed on Russia for its military aggression, do you see, in fact, there will be any kind of impact on supply of military platforms by Russia to India? And it will also have some impact on India's economic engagement with Russia. So how do you see the sanctions imposed on Russia by Western powers impacting India's interest, including in the areas of defense and economic?
So as far as, defense imports are concerned, there will, of course, definitely be an impact as far as the sanctions are concerned in the form of increased pressure from the United States and the European Union not to buy this weaponry from Russia going forward. That's one part of it. I don't see that there would be too much of an economic impact as far as Russia is concerned, because, when we talk about trade and investments, those on their own, they don't depend upon intervention by either the United States or the European Union, except that in terms of the payment system, if that gets affected in future, then of course, India would come under pressure as far as trade with Russia is concerned. But as we've seen, so far, the issue of sanctioning Russian banks as far as suspension of SWIFT accounts has not happened because of the effect it can have on the US interests and the European interests. So as far as that part is concerned, I don't see much of an impact. The trade with Russia, in fact, is not of a very large scale as far as India is concerned. It's mainly the impact that we can foresee as far as armament purchases are concerned.
Ambassador, do a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for your overall analysis of the current situation in Ukraine arising out of the Russian military offensive. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Imran Khan's official visit to Russia during Ukraine war is creating political storm in Pakistan. Leading economist Dr. Sajid Amin Javed from the Sustainable Development Policy Institute said the Russia-Ukraine war and the timing of the PM's visit to Moscow had probably sent a wrong signal to the West.
First, the news about the missing girls and women in Pakistan's Punjab. The statistics from Pakistan's Punjab police have revealed that 3,571 kidnapped girls and women remain missing across the province. This came to light after the kidnapping case of Sobia Batul from Sargodha echoed in the country's Supreme Court recently. In the police records, the status of these girls and women have been declared as not recovered. No one, including the police and their parents, is aware of the whereabouts of these women allegedly kidnapped during the last 4 years from across Punjab. The report brought to the fore a disturbing figure of 40,585 women having been abducted between 2017 and January 2022 from all 36 districts of Punjab. Out of this, 3,571 still remain missing. In the wake of the Sobia case being heard by the Supreme Court, Sargodha police traced bodies of 20 unidentified women from various parts of Punjab. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates around the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts. At least 13 tourists were found dead and 4 remain missing after a boat capsized off Vietnam's central coast of Hoi An on Saturday. The city officials said the accident happened when the boat was carrying 36 tourists and 3 sailors from Kho Lao Sham Island to Hoi An. Vietnam is seeing an increase in tourism activities after the country recently lifted most of its coronavirus curbs. Sin said all the tourists were Vietnamese, including children.
The first convoy of 2,500 MT of wheat assistance from India reached Afghanistan's Jalalabad on Saturday morning. Afghan ambassador to India, Farid Mamundzay, said in a tweet that the 50-truck convoy dispatched from ICP Atari on Wednesday travelled through Pakistan to Afghanistan. World Food Programme would now be distributing this aid to thousands of needy families across Afghanistan. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will share his thoughts with the people in the country and abroad in the Mann Ki Baat program on All India Radio on Sunday. It will be the 86th episode of the monthly radio program. Mann Ki Baat will be broadcast on the entire network of AIR and Doordarshan, AIR News website and News on AIR mobile app. It will also be streamed live on the YouTube channels of the AIR News, DD News, PMO and Information and Broadcasting Ministry.
In FIH Pro League hockey tournament, Indian women defeated Spain 2-1 at the Kalinga Stadium in Bhubaneswar on Saturday. At half-time, both the teams were level with 1 goal each. For India, Jyoti and Neha scored 1 goal each. Segu Marta scored the lone goal for Spain. In the men's sections, India defeated Spain 5-4 at the same venue. India's Harmanpreet Singh scored 2 goals, followed by Shilanan Lakra, Varun Kumar and Samsher Singh, 1 each. India beat Sri Lanka by 7 wickets in the second T20 international to take unassailable 2-0 lead in the 3-match series at Himachal Pradesh Cricket Association Stadium, Dharamshala, a short while ago. Put into bat first, the visitors scored 183 runs for the loss of 5 wickets with the help of Pathum Nisanka's 75 of 53 balls and Dasun Shanaka's not out 47 of 19 balls. For India, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, Jasprit Bumrah, Harshal Patel, Yuzvendra Chahal and Ravindra Jadeja took 1 wicket each. In reply, India overhauled the target in 17.1 overs, riding on Shreyas Iyer's unbeaten 74 of 44 balls and Ravindra Jadeja's not out 45 of 18. For visitors, Lahiru Kumara took 2 wickets. India thrashed Sri Lanka by 62 runs in the first T20 at Lucknow on Thursday.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Let's take a look at the press reports on China. Prasar Bharati Beijing reported that Chinese President Xi Jinping had a telephone conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday. Chinese Foreign Ministry in a statement said that the two sides exchanged views on the current situation in Ukraine. President Putin said Russia is willing to conduct high-level negotiations with Ukraine. The Guardian reports China ponders how Russia's actions in Ukraine could reshape world order. Beijing is walking a diplomatic tightrope, but crisis also offers the opportunity to express grievances against its adversaries with Russia, the US and NATO. Many news agencies reported China stuck to its message on Friday of refusing to call Russia's action in Ukraine an invasion or criticize Moscow despite intensifying assaults from Russia's military in the Eastern European country, which are leading to growing casualties. Eurasian Times Review writes that China appears to be vehemently supporting the Russian military action invasion of Ukraine. But an unstable Ukraine, which is China's belt and road initiative BRI partner, could hurt China's counterfeit weapons industry. Taiwan News reports that 4 Chinese military aircraft entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone on Feb 25, marking the 14th incursion this month. Australian Broadcasting Corporation reports the Australian Prime Minister has slammed China for liberalising trade with Russia, accusing Beijing of undermining Western sanctions over Ukraine and throwing Vladimir Putin a lifeline. Many media houses and international agencies reported, while China has emphasized the importance of sovereignty, when asked at daily press briefing about Russian military aggression in Ukraine, it has repeatedly declined to condemn the assault on Ukraine. Global Times reports Chinese embassy in Ukraine said evacuation plan for Chinese nationals in Ukraine has been activated. They will return home immediately as soon as the flight conditions can ensure their safety. Let's take a look at what made the headlines in Nepal. The Himalayan Times writes that Nepal Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deoba has intensified talks with both the ruling coalition partners and the main opposition CPN-UML to secure parliamentary ratification of the Millennium Challenge Corporation Compact that Nepal has signed with the United States. According to the Kathmandu Post, the Communist Party of Nepal Maoist Center has continued to demonstrate its duplicity and its vacillation has held hostage Nepali politics, which is currently centered on an American grant. Let's take a look at what made the headlines in Bangladesh. State Minister for Foreign Affairs Shahryar Alam has said that 24 Bangladeshi expatriates who left Ukraine after invasion by Russia have been received at the Bangladesh mission in Poland, reports Daily Star. Bangladesh missions in Poland and Romania will receive all Bangladeshi expatriates who leave Ukraine through Poland and Romania borders, said the minister.
And now, before we end, a quick look at the headlines once again. India abstains from voting on UNSC resolution on situation in Ukraine, calls to return to path of diplomacy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks with President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, conveys India's concern for safety and security of Indian citizens present in Ukraine. First flight from Romania with 219 Indian nationals from Ukraine lands in Mumbai. Indian Embassy in Ukraine advises Indian citizens to move to border posts with prior coordination with Government of India officials. Pakistan's Punjab police revealed that over 3,500 kidnapped girls and women remain missing across the province. In FIH Pro League hockey tournament, India defeats Spain in both men's and women's matches at Kaling Stadium in Bhubaneswar And India beat Sri Lanka by 7 wickets in the second T20 cricket match in Dharamshala. And now before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favourite bhajan Vaishnavajan by artists from Australia on their Independence Day.
Vaishnavajan to jane kaiye ke hire paraye chale re aur tukke upkar kare to ye man abhiman mane re saglokh ma sori vande ninda na kare
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.